The shot rang out across the dusty street of San Diego, California, and Fiona Grace stood there with the smoking pistol still raised, watching Marcus Thornton crumple to the ground in front of the saloon where he had dragged her 3 months prior, and done things no man should ever do to a woman. She felt nothing but cold satisfaction as his blood seeped into the dirt, mixing with the dust of August 1878, and when the crowd that had gathered started murmuring, she lowered the gun slowly, her green eyes defiant and clear. The marshal came running, his boots thudding against the wooden boardwalk, but before he could reach her, a tall figure stepped between them. The cowboy was lean and sun-weathered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in firelight. He held up one hand to the marshal, his other hand resting casually on his own holster, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and calm. "Marshal Daniels, before you go arresting this woman, you might want to hear what happened." "Step aside, Prescott," the marshal said, though his tone lacked conviction. "A woman just shot a man in broad daylight. A woman just shot the man who assaulted her 3 months back," the cowboy named Prescott said, his voice carrying across the street so everyone could hear. "The man who hurt her when she was working at the general store and then laughed about it in the saloon every night since. The man who told anyone who would listen what he did, like it was something to be proud of." Fiona's hand trembled now, the reality of what she had done starting to settle into her bones, but she kept her chin up. She had known this moment would come. She had planned for it, saved money for 3 months while working every job she could find, determined that if she was going to hang for murder, at least Marcus Thornton would not be alive to hurt another woman. The marshal looked between them, his weathered face troubled. "That true, Miss Grace?" "Every word," she said, and her voice did not shake. "He hurt me. He ruined me, and he felt no shame about it, so I killed him, and I feel no shame either." Prescott Lawrence turned to look at her then, really look at her, and something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. His brown eyes were grave but not judgmental, and when he spoke again, it was directly to her. "Neither would I." Those 3 words changed everything. The crowd, which had been muttering and uncertain, began to shift. Women whispered to their husbands. Men who had heard Marcus Thornton's boasts in the saloon began to nod slowly. The marshal sighed heavily and looked down at the body, then back at Fiona. "You will need to come to my office and give a statement," he said finally. "But I reckon there are about 30 witnesses here who can testify to what Thornton was. Prescott, you come too." Fiona felt her knees go weak with relief, but she locked them and stood straight. Prescott Lawrence offered her his arm, a gesture so old-fashioned and gentlemanly that it nearly broke through her carefully maintained composure. She took it, and together they walked toward the marshal's office while the undertaker went to deal with Marcus Thornton's body. Inside the small office, Fiona sat in a hard wooden chair and told her story. She told it plainly, without emotion, because if she let herself feel it, she would fall apart. She told how Marcus Thornton had caught her closing up the general store one evening in May, how he had forced her into the back room, how he had violated her while she screamed and fought, and how no one had come to help. She told how she had reported it to the previous marshal, who had been Marcus's friend, and had told her that a woman of her station should be careful about making accusations against respectable men. She told how she had quit her job at the store because she could not bear to walk past that back room every day, how she had taken work washing laundry and cleaning houses, how she had saved every penny to buy the pistol and the bullets. "I practiced shooting bottles out in the desert for 2 weeks, she said, her voice flat. "I wanted to make sure I would not miss. I wanted to make sure he would not have a chance to hurt anyone else. Marshal Daniels wrote everything down, his pen scratching across the paper. Prescott Lawrence stood by the window, listening, his face growing darker with every word she spoke. When she finished, there was silence in the room. "The previous marshal left town about 6 weeks ago," Daniels said finally. "Went back east. I took over his position. If you had come to me, Miss Grace, I would have helped you." "I did not know that," Fiona said simply, "and it does not matter now. It is done." The marshal nodded slowly. "I will need to hold an inquest. But given the circumstances and the witnesses, I do not believe you will face charges for murder. Self-defense, even delayed, is still self-defense when the law fails to protect you." Fiona felt something loosen in her chest, but she did not let herself hope. Not yet. Prescott spoke from the window. "Where are you staying, Miss Grace?" "I have a room at the boarding house on 3rd Street, she said. "Mrs. Chen rents rooms to working women." "You should not be alone tonight," he said. "There might be friends of Thornton who do not see things the way the law does." The marshal nodded in agreement. "Prescott is right. Do you have family in town?" "No family anywhere," Fiona said. "My parents died of fever when I was 16. I came west to find work. That was 3 years ago." She was 19 now, though she felt decades older. 3 years of struggling to survive in a world that cared little for young women alone. 3 months of living with the weight of what had been done to her and what she planned to do about it. Prescott turned from the window. "I will see you safely back to the boarding house and make sure no one bothers you. I have a ranch about 10 miles outside town. I come in once a week for supplies. I will check on you tomorrow." Fiona wanted to tell him that she did not need protection, that she had just proven she could protect herself, but the truth was that she was exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the shooting was draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. "Thank you," she said quietly. The marshal let them go with a warning to stay available for the inquest, which he would schedule for 3 days hence. Prescott walked Fiona back to the boarding house, his presence solid and reassuring beside her. The streets were quieter now, but people watched from windows and doorways. Some faces were sympathetic, some were curious. A few were hostile. Mrs. Chen met them at the door of the boarding house, her small face creased with worry. She was a Chinese immigrant who had come to California during the gold rush years and had managed to build a respectable business despite the prejudice she faced. "Miss Fiona, I heard what happened," she said, taking Fiona's hands. "You come inside. You are safe here." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Fiona turned to Prescott. "And thank you, Mr. Lawrence. You did not have to speak up for me." "Yes, I did," he said simply. His brown eyes held hers for a moment. "What was done to you was wrong. What you did today was justice. I will come by tomorrow to see how you are." He tipped his hat and left, his long stride carrying him back down the street. Fiona watched him go, something stirring in her chest that she could not quite name. Mrs. Chen led her upstairs to her small room, which contained a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single chair. It was not much, but it was clean and safe, and right now that was all Fiona needed. "You rest," Mrs. Chen said. "I will bring you some soup later. You need to eat." Alone in her room, Fiona finally let herself collapse onto the bed. She did not cry. She had not cried since the night Marcus Thornton had hurt her, and she would not cry now. But she let herself shake, let herself feel the weight of what she had done. She had killed a man. She had ended a life. And she felt no regret, only a deep, weary relief that he would never hurt anyone again. Sleep came in fits and starts, filled with dreams of smoke and blood and brown eyes that looked at her with understanding instead of judgment. The next morning, Fiona woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. For a moment, she forgot what had happened, and then it all came rushing back. She sat up slowly, her body aching as if she had been in a physical fight. In a way, she supposed she had been fighting for 3 months, fighting the weight of her trauma and her determination to set things right. She washed her face in the basin and changed into her other dress, a simple gray cotton that was worn but clean. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a pale face with shadows under green eyes, red gold hair pulled back in a practical bun. She looked like what she was, a young woman who had survived something terrible and was still standing. Downstairs, Mrs. Chen had breakfast waiting, rice porridge with vegetables and tea. 2 other women who boarded there, both laundresses like Fiona had become, sat at the table. They looked up when she entered, their expressions uncertain. "Morning, Fiona," said Mary, a widow in her 30s. "We heard what happened." Fiona poured herself tea with steady hands. "I expect everyone has heard by now." "Marcus Thornton had it coming," said the other woman, Sarah, who was barely older than Fiona. "He tried to corner me once behind the laundry. I hit him with an iron and ran. You were braver than me." "Not braver," Fiona said quietly, "just more desperate." They ate in companionable silence after that. When there was a knock at the door an hour later, Fiona was surprised to find Prescott Lawrence standing there with his hat in his hands. He cleaned up well, she noticed. His dark hair was still damp from washing, and he had shaved. He wore clean denim trousers and a dark blue shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. "Mr. Lawrence," she said, suddenly conscious of her plain dress and simple hairstyle. "Miss Grace, I came to see how you are faring and to let you know what I have learned." He glanced past her to where Mrs. Chen was hovering protectively. "May I come in, or would you prefer to speak outside?" Mrs. Chen answered before Fiona could. "You come in. You are a good man, Prescott Lawrence. Sit in the parlor." The boarding house parlor was small but neat, with chairs and a settee arranged around a braided rug. Fiona sat in one of the chairs, and Prescott took another, perching on the edge as if he was not quite comfortable being indoors. "I spoke to several people this morning," he said without preamble. "The inquest is set for tomorrow instead of 3 days from now. Marshal Daniels wants to resolve this quickly. He has already collected statements from 15 witnesses who heard Thornton boasting about what he did to you. He also found 3 other women who said Thornton had assaulted them, but they were too afraid to report it." Fiona felt sick. 3 others? Yes. One left town rather than face him every day. The other 2 still live here. They have agreed to testify at the inquest if needed. Prescott's jaw was tight with anger. The marshal is furious that this was allowed to go on. He is making it clear that things will be different under his watch. "That is good," Fiona said softly. "I wish it had been different before, but at least it is changing now. The consensus in town is that you did what needed to be done," Prescott continued. "There are a few who think you should hang for murder, but they are in the minority. Most folks understand justice when they see it." Fiona nodded, relief washing through her. "Thank you for telling me. And thank you again for standing up for me yesterday. You did not know me. You did not owe me anything." Prescott met her eyes steadily. "I know what it is like when the law fails to protect people who need it. My sister was killed by her husband 5 years ago. He beat her to death, and the law said it was a domestic matter and did not interfere. He walked away free and married another woman within 6 months. She is trapped with him now, and there is nothing anyone can do." The pain in his voice was raw and real. Fiona felt her heart clench with sympathy. "I am so sorry." "Her name was Margaret," he said quietly. "She was 2 years younger than me, kindest person I ever knew. When I saw you standing there yesterday with that gun, I thought of her. I thought about how I wished she had fought back. I wished she had killed him instead of letting him kill her. So when I said I would feel no shame either, I meant it." They sat in silence for a moment. two people bound by their separate griefs and their understanding of how the world could fail the vulnerable. Then Prescott cleared his throat and straightened his shoulders. "I also came to make you an offer," he said. "After the inquest, assuming you are cleared of charges, you will need work. The town will have mixed feelings about you for a while. Some will support you, but others will make life difficult. I could use help at my ranch. I run cattle, but I also have horses and a vegetable garden that I have been neglecting. The work is hard, but it is honest, and you would have your own cabin. I would pay fair wages." Fiona stared at him. "You are offering me a job. You barely know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you are strong. I know you are brave. I know you can shoot straight." A hint of humor touched his eyes. "And I know you need a fresh start, somewhere people are not going to whisper about you every time you walk down the street." It was a generous offer, perhaps too generous. Fiona studied him, trying to understand his motives. He did not look at her the way men usually looked at women they wanted something from. His gaze was direct and respectful. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked. "Because someone should have done something for Margaret," he said. "Because someone should have done something for you 3 months ago. Because I have a chance to help now, and I am going to take it." Fiona felt something warm unfold in her chest, something that might have been hope. "If the inquest goes well, I will consider your offer seriously." "That is all I ask." Prescott stood, hat in hand. "The inquest is tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I will be there to testify on your behalf. Try to get some rest today." After he left, Fiona sat in the parlor for a long time thinking. She had spent 3 months focused only on her plan for revenge, not thinking beyond the moment she would pull the trigger. Now she had to consider what came next. The idea of leaving San Diego, of starting fresh somewhere away from the memories and the whispers, was appealing. And Prescott Lawrence seemed like a good man, one who understood pain and was trying to do something decent with his own grief. The inquest the next day was held in the town hall, a simple wooden building that served for official gatherings. Fiona wore her best dress, a dark green cotton that matched her eyes, and pinned her hair up carefully. She wanted to look respectable, composed, like someone who had made a difficult but necessary choice rather than a wild woman driven by emotion. The room was packed. It seemed like half the town had come to watch. Fiona sat at the front with Marshall Daniels on one side and a lawyer named Mr. Peterson on the other. Mr. Peterson had offered his services free of charge, saying that he believed in her cause. Prescott sat in the front row of spectators, his presence steadying. The judge, an older man named Harrison, listened to the evidence with a stern expression. The marshal presented the statements from witnesses who had heard Marcus Thornton boasting about the assault. The 3 other women came forward, one by one, and told their own stories of what Thornton had done to them. Their testimony was damning, painting a picture of a predatory man who had hurt multiple women and faced no consequences. When it was Fiona's turn to testify, she stood and told her story again, her voice clear and steady. She did not embellish or dramatize. She simply told the truth, what he had done, how she had reported it and been dismissed, how she had decided that if the law would not protect her or other women, she would protect them herself. "I knew I would likely hang for it," she said, looking directly at the judge. "I made my peace with that. But I could not live with myself if I did nothing and he hurt someone else. So I practiced until I could shoot straight, and then I found him and I shot him. I would do it again." The judge's expression was unreadable. "You understand that vigilante justice is not how a civilized society operates, Miss Grace." "I understand that," she said quietly. "I also understand that when the law fails to protect half the population, that population must find ways to protect itself. I am not proud of what I did." But I am not ashamed of it either. Prescott testified next, describing what he had witnessed and why he had spoken up for Fiona. His testimony was brief but powerful, and several people in the audience nodded in agreement as he spoke. The judge deliberated for less than an hour. When he returned, the room fell silent. "This is a complicated case," Judge Harrison said. "Under the letter of the law, Miss Fiona Grace committed murder. However, the circumstances surrounding that act, and the clear evidence that Marcus Thornton was a predatory criminal who faced no justice for his crimes, must be taken into account. Furthermore, the failure of the previous marshal to investigate Miss Grace's initial complaint represents a failure of the legal system itself." Fiona held her breath. "It is the finding of this court that Miss Grace acted in delayed self-defense and in defense of future potential victims. While this court cannot condone vigilante justice, it also cannot ignore the facts of this case. Miss Fiona Grace is hereby cleared of all charges. This inquest is concluded." The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others protested angrily. Fiona sat very still, letting the verdict sink in. She was free. She was actually free. Prescott was beside her in an instant, offering his hand to help her stand. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "I can barely believe it," she whispered. "Believe it. You are free to start over now." Outside the town hall, several women came up to thank her, including the three who had testified. One of them, a woman named Catherine, took Fiona's hands and said, "You gave us our voices back. Thank you." That nearly broke through Fiona's composure, but she held firm. She thanked them and accepted their good wishes, all while feeling somewhat surreal, as if this was happening to someone else. Prescott stayed close, running interference when anyone seemed too aggressive or angry. When a man started shouting that Fiona was a murderer who should hang, Prescott stepped between them and said something low and firm that made the man back off. Finally, they made it back to the boarding house. Mrs. Chen met them with tea and rice cakes, her small face wreathed in smiles. "I knew they would see sense," she said. "Now you can live your life, Miss Fiona." "Yes," Fiona said softly. "Now I can live my life." She looked at Prescott, who stood by the door looking like he was about to leave. "Mr. Lawrence, about your offer. If it still stands, I would like to accept it." His face lit up with a smile that transformed his usually serious expression. "It stands. When would you like to start? Is tomorrow too soon?" "Tomorrow is perfect. I will come by with a wagon in the morning. Bring whatever you have. The ranch is not fancy, but it is comfortable." After he left, Fiona went upstairs to pack her meager belongings. She did not have much: 2 dresses, some undergarments, a few books, a photograph of her parents. Everything fit into a single carpet bag. 3 years in California, and this was all she had accumulated. But she was alive, and she was free, and she had a chance to start fresh. That was more than she had expected to have. That night, she lay in bed and thought about Prescott Lawrence. He was not conventionally handsome, but there was something appealing about his weathered face and kind eyes. More importantly, he was decent. In Fiona's experience, decency was rarer and more valuable than good looks. He had stood up for her when he did not have to. He had offered her work and a safe place when she needed it most. Those were the actions of a truly good man. She would not let herself hope for anything beyond employment and safety. Romance was not something she could afford to think about, not after what Marcus Thornton had done to her. The thought of any man touching her made her skin crawl. But friendship, respect, honest work, those things she could accept. Morning came bright and clear. Fiona dressed in her traveling clothes and said goodbye to Mrs. Chen and the other women at the boarding house. They hugged her and wished her well, and Mrs. Chen pressed a package of rice cakes into her hands. "You come visit," she said firmly. You are always welcome here." "I will," Fiona promised. Prescott arrived right on time with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses. He helped Fiona load her carpet bag, then handed her up onto the seat beside him. As they pulled away from the boarding house, Fiona looked back at San Diego one last time. She had come here 3 years ago looking for a new life. She had found pain and struggle and, ultimately, justice. Now she was leaving to find whatever came next. The ride out to the ranch took about 2 hours. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh way. Rolling hills dotted with scrub brush, distant mountains purple against the blue sky, the smell of sage and dust in the air. Prescott pointed out landmarks as they drove. A creek that ran year-round, a stand of oak trees where deer came to graze, the boundary of his property marked by a stone wall someone had built decades ago. "My father bought this land in 1855, he explained. "He wanted to raise cattle. He and my mother worked themselves to the bone building it up. They died in a cholera outbreak in 1870. My sister Margaret and I inherited it together. After she married and moved away, I bought out her share so she would have money of her own. Not that it did her any good in the end." The pain in his voice was still fresh. Fiona understood. Some losses never really healed. "You have run it alone since then?" she asked. "Mostly. I hire hands during roundup and branding, but day to day it is just me. I have about 200 head of cattle and 20 horses. It is enough to make a living, but it is a lot of work for one person." The ranch came into view as they crested a hill. A sturdy wooden house with a porch, a large barn, several corrals, and a small cabin set apart from the main house. Everything was well maintained but had the slightly worn look of a place that could use more hands. "That is the guest cabin," Prescott said, pointing. "It has a stove, a bed, a table, and a chair. Not fancy, but it is yours for as long as you want it. The necessary is out back. There is a well between the cabin and the main house." He pulled the wagon up to the cabin and helped Fiona down. Inside it was simple but clean. A single room with an iron bed frame and mattress, a small table with 1 chair, a wood stove for cooking and heat, and a trunk for storage. A window looked out toward the mountains. "It is perfect," Fiona said honestly. After the tiny room at the boarding house, this felt spacious. "I will let you get settled," Prescott said. "Come up to the main house when you are ready and we can discuss what work needs doing." Fiona unpacked her few belongings and took a few minutes to breathe and adjust. This was her home now, her safe place. She had killed a man to get here, but she was here, and she was free. When she walked up to the main house, she found Prescott in the kitchen making coffee. The house was neat, but had the bachelor look of a place where function mattered more than decoration. There were books on shelves, sturdy furniture, and a few photographs on the walls. "That is my parents," Prescott said, noticing her looking at one. "And that is Margaret." The woman in the photograph looked like her brother, dark hair, serious eyes, a small smile. Fiona felt a pang of sadness for the woman she would never meet. "She looks kind," Fiona said. She was. Prescott poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "Now about work. The garden is overgrown and needs tending. The chickens need feeding daily and eggs collected. I have been doing my own cooking, but I am terrible at it, so if you can cook, that would be a blessing. Beyond that, there is always mending, cleaning, general upkeep. If you are interested, I can teach you about horses. I breed and train them, and an extra pair of hands would be useful." "I can cook and clean and mend," Fiona said. "I have never worked with horses, but I am willing to learn." "Good. We will start with the basics tomorrow. For now, why don't you familiarize yourself with the place? Dinner is at 6. I usually eat in here, but you are welcome to take your meals in your cabin if you prefer privacy." Fiona considered. Privacy sounded safe, but isolation also sounded lonely. "I will eat here," she decided. "If that is all right with you." "More than all right. I have been talking to myself for too long." That made her smile, a real smile that felt strange on her face after months of grief and anger. Prescott smiled back, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Two damaged people trying to find their way forward. Fiona spent the afternoon exploring the ranch. She found the chicken coop and introduced herself to the hens, collected eggs, and located the garden, which was indeed overgrown but had good bones. Tomatoes sprawled wildly, squash vines tangled everywhere, and herbs had gone to seed. It would take work, but she could bring it back. She watched from a distance as Prescott worked with a young horse in the corral, his movements patient and steady. He had a gift with animals, she could see that. The horse, which had been skittish, gradually calmed under his gentle handling. For dinner, she made a simple meal from supplies she found in the kitchen: fried potatoes, bacon, and eggs. Prescott ate like a man who had been surviving on hardtack and jerky, which he probably had been. "This is delicious," he said sincerely. "You have no idea how tired I was of my own cooking." "It is nothing fancy," Fiona said, but she was pleased. They talked while they ate, carefully avoiding painful subjects. He told her about the ranch, about the cattle scattered in the hills, about his plans to expand the horse breeding operation. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about her parents who had been farmers, about coming west after they died because there was nothing left for her there. "Have you always lived in California?" she asked. "Mostly. We came west in 1849 during the gold rush. My father tried mining for a year, realized it was a fool's game, and bought land instead. Smartest thing he ever did." After dinner, Fiona washed the dishes while Prescott went to check on the animals one last time. When he came back, she was drying the last plate. "You do not have to do all the cleaning," he said. "We can split chores. I do not mind. You have been generous to me. This is the least I can do." He looked like he wanted to argue but nodded instead. "Well, thank you. I will see you in the morning. Sleep well, Miss Grace." "You can call me Fiona," she said. "If we are going to be working together, we might as well use first names." "Fiona," he said, trying it out. "Then you should call me Prescott, or Press if you prefer. That is what my friends call me." "Prescott," she said and smiled. "Good night." Walking back to her cabin under a sky full of stars, Fiona felt something she had not felt in a long time: peace. The desert air was cool, the night was quiet except for the distant sound of cattle, and she was safe. She was actually safe. The days fell into a rhythm. Fiona woke early, fed the chickens, collected eggs, and made breakfast for both of them. After breakfast, Prescott would go out to work with the cattle or horses, and Fiona would tackle the garden, the cleaning, the mending. In the afternoons, Prescott started teaching her about horses. He was a patient teacher, explaining everything carefully and never making her feel foolish for not knowing things. He taught her how to approach a horse, how to read its body language, how to brush and saddle it. After a week, he had her leading horses around the corral. After 2 weeks, she was riding. "You are a natural," he said one afternoon as she guided a gentle mare through a series of turns. "You have good hands and a good seat." Fiona glowed with the praise. She had never been particularly good at anything before, had always just scraped by. But this, working with horses, felt right somehow. The work was hard and physical, and she fell into bed exhausted every night. But it was good exhaustion, the kind that came from honest labor. Her hands toughened, her arms grew stronger, and she found herself laughing more often. Prescott had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard sometimes, and he seemed pleased when he could make her smile. They talked during meals, long conversations that ranged from philosophy to favorite foods to childhood memories. Fiona learned that Prescott had wanted to be a teacher when he was young, but had given up that dream to run the ranch after his parents died. She told him about her mother's flower garden and how she had loved books but could rarely afford them. "You can read any of mine," Prescott said immediately, gesturing to the shelves in his house. "I have been collecting them for years." So Fiona started borrowing books, reading by lamplight in her cabin before bed. She read novels and poetry and agricultural manuals, anything she could get her hands on. When she finished a book, she and Prescott would discuss it over dinner. Those conversations were some of her favorite times. A month passed, then two. Summer faded into fall and the heat lessened. Fiona's garden produced abundantly, and she spent happy hours preserving vegetables for winter. She made pickles and canned tomatoes and dried herbs, stocking the pantry against the cold months ahead. Prescott watched her work with something like wonder. "I have never seen anyone take such joy in canning," he said one afternoon. "I like making things," Fiona said simply. "I like knowing that we will have food through the winter because of work I did now. It feels purposeful." He nodded, understanding. "That is how I feel about the horses. Everyone I train well might save someone's life someday. A good horse is worth more than gold out here." They were standing in the kitchen, Fiona at the stove stirring a pot of tomato sauce, Prescott leaning against the counter drinking coffee. It was a domestic scene, comfortable and easy. Fiona realized with a start that she was happy. Actually happy for the first time since before her parents died. "What are you thinking?" Prescott asked, noticing her expression. "That I am glad I came here," she said honestly. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Prescott." "Thank you for taking it," he said quietly. Their eyes met and held, and something shifted in the air between them. Prescott looked like he wanted to say something more, but then the tomato sauce bubbled over and the moment passed. But after that, Fiona started noticing things. The way Prescott smiled when he saw her in the morning. The way he always made sure she had the easier tasks when the work was particularly hard. The way he listened to her, really listened, like her words mattered. The way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. She also noticed her own reactions. The way her heart beat faster when he came into a room. The way she found excuses to work near him. The way she had stopped flinching when he accidentally brushed against her. The way his touch no longer made her afraid. That realization was startling. After what Marcus Thornton had done, Fiona had assumed she would never be comfortable around men again, never be able to let one close. But Prescott was different. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel unsafe. He treated her with respect and kindness, and slowly, almost without her realizing it, her fear had transformed into something else. Trust. And maybe more than trust. Winter came to California, which meant cooler temperatures and occasional rain rather than snow. The ranch work changed. Less time outdoors, more time in the barn maintaining equipment and caring for animals. Fiona and Prescott spent more time together in close quarters, and the tension between them grew. One evening in December, they were working together in the barn, repairing a saddle. Their hands touched as they reached for the same tool, and they both froze. Prescott pulled back immediately. "Sorry," he said. "It is all right," Fiona said, and meant it. He looked at her searchingly. "Is it? Because I do not want to make you uncomfortable, Fiona. I know what you have been through. I know you might not ever want." He stopped, struggling for words. Fiona set down the tool and turned to face him fully. "What I went through was terrible. It hurt me in ways I am still healing from. But being here working with you has helped me heal. You have been nothing but kind and respectful. You have made me feel safe. That is not nothing, Prescott. You feel safe," he repeated like he was testing the words. "That is good. I want you to feel safe." "I do," she said firmly. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "And I am starting to feel other things too." His breath caught. "Other things? I like you," she said simply. "I like talking to you, I like working with you, I like the way you treat animals with such patience, I like your sense of humor. She stopped, blushing. "I like you, Prescott." "I like you too," he said quietly. "More than like, if I am being honest, but I did not want to say anything because I did not want you to think that I had expectations. I offered you this job because you needed help, not because I wanted anything from you." "I know," she said. "That is part of why I like you." They stood there in the barn with the lantern light flickering around them, looking at each other. Then, slowly, Prescott reached out and took her hand. It was the most deliberate, careful gesture, giving her every chance to pull away. Fiona laced her fingers through his and held on. "Is this all right?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding hands. It was such a simple thing, but for Fiona it was monumental. She had not let a man touch her willingly since the assault, but this felt nothing like that. This felt safe and warm and right. "Can I court you properly?" Prescott asked. "I know the situation is unusual, you living here and working for me. But I would like to do this right. I would like to take you to town for dinner sometimes, or maybe we could go on picnics when the weather is nice. I want to spend time with you and see if this could be something real." "It already feels real to me," Fiona said. "But yes, I would like that very much." His smile was bright enough to light the whole barn. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, a gesture so old-fashioned and sweet that it made her heart ache. "Then we will take this slow," he said. "As slow as you need. No expectations, no pressure, just us getting to know each other and seeing where it goes." "That sounds perfect," Fiona said. Over the next few months they courted. Prescott had been right that the situation was unusual, living and working together as they were, but they made it work. He started leaving small gifts for her, wildflowers in a jar, a book he thought she would like, a new pair of work gloves when her old ones wore out. She cooked his favorite meals and mended his clothes with care, adding little touches like embroidery on the cuffs of his shirts. They went to town twice a month, and Prescott always made a point of taking her to the hotel dining room for a proper meal. They would dress in their best clothes and sit across from each other like a normal courting couple, talking and laughing while the other diners watched curiously. Fiona knew people gossiped about them, the woman who had killed a man and the cowboy who had defended her, but she found she did not care. Let them talk. She was happy. In February, Prescott took her on a picnic up in the hills. They rode horses to a spot he knew, a flat area with a view of the valley and the distant ocean. They ate the food Fiona had packed and lay on a blanket looking up at the clouds. "I have been thinking," Prescott said carefully, "about the ranch and the future." "What about it?" "I want to expand the horse breeding operation, really make something of it. But that takes capital and work and time. It also would help to have a partner, someone who knows horses and understands the business." Fiona propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Are you offering me a partnership?" "I am offering you everything," he said quietly. "A partnership in the ranch, yes, but also a partnership in life if you want it. I am asking you to marry me, Fiona. I love you. I think I started falling in love with you the day I saw you standing in that street with your head held high, refusing to be ashamed of seeking justice. And I have fallen deeper every day since." Fiona's heart was pounding. "You love me." "I do, completely. And I know it has only been 6 months, and I know you have been through hell, and I know this might be too soon. But I also know what I feel, and I know I want to spend my life with you. So I am asking, will you marry me?" Fiona thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The pain and the violence and the fear. but also the healing and the growth and the slow rebuilding of trust. Prescott had helped her become herself again, had given her space to heal while also showing her what real love could look like. "I love you too," she said, and watched his face light up with joy. "Yes, Prescott, I will marry you." He pulled her close and kissed her, careful and sweet. It was Fiona's first real kiss, the first one given freely and received with joy. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "I do not have a ring yet," Prescott admitted. "I was not sure you would say yes." "I do not need a ring," Fiona said. "I just need you." But he insisted on getting her one anyway. The next time they went to town, he took her to the jeweler and let her pick out a simple gold band with a small emerald that matched her eyes. The jeweler, a kind older man named Mr. Friedman, congratulated them warmly. They were married in April of 1879, almost a year after Fiona had killed Marcus Thornton. The ceremony was held at the ranch with Marshal Daniels officiating and about 20 guests in attendance. Mrs. Chen came from town, along with several other women who had supported Fiona. Some of Prescott's friends from neighboring ranches attended, as did a few people from town who had spoken up for Fiona at the inquest. Fiona wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers from the hills. Prescott wore his best suit and looked so handsome and nervous that it made Fiona smile. When he took her hands and promised to love and honor her for the rest of his life, she believed him completely. After the ceremony, there was a celebration with food and music. Fiona danced with her new husband under the open sky, feeling freer and happier than she had ever thought possible. When the guests finally left and they were alone, Prescott carried her over the threshold of the main house, which was now their house together. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently, setting her down. Fiona was nervous. Despite all the healing she had done, the idea of physical intimacy still frightened her. But she trusted Prescott. She loved him, and she wanted to build a complete life with him, including this. "A little," she admitted, "but I want this." "I want you. We will go slow," he promised. "And if you need to stop at any time, we stop. No questions, no guilt, all right, all right." He was true to his word, patient and gentle and careful with her. When old fears surfaced, he soothed them with soft words and softer touches. He let her set the pace, let her take control when she needed to. And when they finally came together as husband and wife, it was nothing like what Marcus Thornton had done to her. It was tender and loving and healing in ways she had not known were possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Fiona felt tears on her cheeks. But they were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief and release, the final letting go of the trauma that had defined her for so long. "I have got you," Prescott whispered, holding her close. "You are safe. You are loved. I have got you." "I know," she whispered back. "I know." Their married life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Fiona continued to work with the horses, and together they built up the breeding program. Word spread about the quality of their animals, and buyers started coming from all over California. The ranch prospered. In town, Fiona's reputation slowly changed. She was no longer just the woman who had killed a man. She became Mrs. Lawrence, the rancher's wife, known for her way with horses and her kindness to the women who sought her out. Because women did seek her out, women who had been hurt and did not know where to turn. Fiona listened to them, helped them when she could, and connected them with Marshal Daniels, who had proven himself an ally. Prescott supported all of this without question. "You are making a difference," he said. "I am proud of you." In the summer of 1880, Fiona realized she was pregnant. She told Prescott one evening after dinner, and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Fiona asked, though she could see that he was. "I am the happiest man alive," he said, kissing her soundly. The pregnancy was not easy. Fiona was sick for the first few months and tired all the time. But Prescott took care of her, insisting she rest while he took over most of the chores. Mrs. Chen came out to the ranch several times to check on her and bring special teas that helped with the nausea. In March of 1881, their son was born. He came into the world screaming and healthy, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Thomas, after Prescott's father, and he became the center of their world. Prescott was a devoted father, walking the floor with Thomas at night when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, singing silly songs to make the baby smile. Fiona watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. "You are wonderful with him," she said one evening, watching Prescott rock Thomas to sleep. "He is wonderful," Prescott said simply. "He is ours. How could I be anything but devoted?" Thomas grew from a baby into a toddler, then a little boy. He had his father's patience and his mother's determination, and he loved the horses as much as both his parents. By the time he was 4, he was riding with confidence, sitting in front of Prescott on the saddle and learning everything his father could teach him. In 1884, Fiona gave birth to their daughter, whom they named Margaret after Prescott's sister. She had red gold hair like her mother and her father's serious brown eyes, and she was fearless from the moment she could crawl. Prescott cried when they named her, touched that Fiona wanted to honor his lost sister. "She would have loved you," he said, holding baby Margaret close. "She would have been so happy to know I found you." Life was full and busy with 2 children and a thriving ranch. Fiona learned to balance motherhood with work, often bringing the children with her as she tended the garden or worked with horses. Thomas loved helping in the barn, and Margaret, even as a baby, seemed fascinated by the animals. The ranch continued to grow. They built a new barn and expanded the corrals. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the cattle and horses, good men who respected Fiona and treated her as an equal partner in the business. The Lawrence Ranch became known throughout California for producing some of the best horses in the state. In town, the last of the whispers about Fiona's past finally died away. She was simply Mrs. Lawrence now, a respected member of the community. She joined the church auxiliary and helped organize charity events. She taught some of the local girls how to ride, believing that all women should know how to handle horses and how to protect themselves. Marshall Daniels remained a good friend. He had cleaned up San Diego significantly, making it clear that violence against women would not be tolerated. He often credited Fiona's case as the turning point, saying that her courage had forced the town to confront its failings. One afternoon in 1887, when Thomas was 6 and Margaret was 3, a young woman showed up at the ranch. She was thin and scared-looking, with bruises on her arms that she tried to hide. Fiona recognized that look, had worn it herself once. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. "My name is Anna. I heard that you help women who are in trouble. My husband, he hurts me. I need to get away, but I have nowhere to go." Fiona looked at Prescott, who nodded immediately. "We can help," Fiona said. "Come inside." They gave Anna the guest cabin and helped her get work in town. When her husband came looking for her, threatening violence, Marshall Daniels arrested him and made it clear he was not welcome in San Diego anymore. Anna stayed in the cabin for 3 months until she had saved enough money to travel to her sister in San Francisco. Before she left, she hugged Fiona tightly. "You saved my life," she said. "Thank you. You saved your own life by leaving," Fiona said. "I just helped you have a safe place to land." After that, other women came. Fiona and Prescott developed a reputation as people who would help, no questions asked. They never turned anyone away. The guest cabin became known as a sanctuary, a place where women could heal and plan their next steps. "You are doing what I wish someone had done for Margaret," Prescott said one night as they lay in bed. "Every woman you help is a woman who gets to live. That matters, Fiona." "We are doing it," she corrected. "I could not do this without your support." He kissed her forehead. "We make a good team." Years passed. Thomas grew into a tall, serious boy who loved the horses as much as his parents. Margaret became a whirlwind of energy, fearless and stubborn, and determined to do everything her older brother could do. Fiona taught both children to read and write, and Prescott taught them about ranching and horses and the value of hard work. In 1890, Fiona gave birth to another son whom they named Henry. He was a quiet baby, content to watch the world with thoughtful eyes, so different from his boisterous siblings. Thomas, now 9, was proud to have a little brother. Margaret, 6 years old, declared that she would protect Henry from everything. The ranch had become more than just a business. It was a home, a sanctuary, a place where people came to heal and find new beginnings. Fiona often thought about the young woman she had been, standing in that San Diego street with a smoking gun in her hand. She had been so full of pain and rage and desperation. She had thought her life was over. But instead, it had been a beginning. The act that should have destroyed her had instead led her to Prescott, to the ranch, to the life she had built. She did not regret killing Marcus Thornton. She still felt no shame. But she also felt grateful for everything that had come after, for the unexpected grace of second chances. One evening in late 1891, Fiona and Prescott sat on the porch watching the sunset while the children played in the yard. Thomas was teaching Margaret how to rope a fence post while Henry toddled around under their watchful eyes. "You ever think about that day?" Prescott asked quietly. "The day we met." "Sometimes," Fiona said. "Do you?" "Often. I think about how close I came to never knowing you. If I had not been in town that day, if I had not spoken up, everything would be different." "But you were there," Fiona said, taking his hand. "And you did speak up, and here we are." "Here we are," he agreed, squeezing her hand, "with our children and our ranch and our life together. I am the luckiest man in the world, Fiona Lawrence." "I am pretty lucky myself," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They sat like that as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The children's laughter echoed across the yard. Horses whinnied in the corrals. The evening air smelled of sage and dust and growing things. It was not the life Fiona had imagined when she came west at 16, orphaned and alone. It was better. It was healing and wholeness and love. It was justice and second chances, and the courage to keep going even when everything seemed lost. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and joys. Thomas took more responsibility on the ranch as he grew older, showing a natural talent for training horses that rivaled his father's. Margaret proved to be a gifted rider, fearless and skilled, and insisted on learning everything the boys learned. Henry was quieter but observant, with a gift for understanding animals that amazed everyone. In 1895, when Thomas was 14, a neighboring rancher tried to cheat them on a horse sale. Thomas handled the situation with calm authority, refusing to be intimidated and insisting on the agreed-upon price. When the rancher finally backed down, Prescott pulled his son aside. "I am proud of you," he said. "You stood your ground with respect and strength. That is the mark of a good man." Thomas looked at his father seriously. "You taught me that. You and Mother both. You taught me that strength is not about violence or intimidation. It is about knowing what is right and standing firm." Prescott felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what it was all about, he thought. raising children who understood justice and compassion, who would make the world better than they found it. Margaret, at 12, was already talking about wanting to compete in riding competitions. Fiona was hesitant at first, worried about her daughter's safety, but Prescott convinced her to let Margaret try. "She is careful and skilled," he said, "and she needs to know we trust her abilities. Besides, she is your daughter. She was born knowing how to fight for what she wants." So they let Margaret compete, and she won more often than she lost. She became known throughout the region as one of the best young riders around, and she wore her victories with pride, but also with grace. Fiona made sure her daughter understood that winning was not everything, that treating opponents with respect mattered more than trophies. Henry, at 5, was content to follow his older siblings around and help where he could. He had a special way with injured or frightened animals, a gentleness that allowed them to trust him. Fiona often found him in the barn, sitting quietly with a nervous horse or cradling a hurt bird, his small face serious with concentration. The guest cabin continued to serve as a sanctuary. Over the years, dozens of women had stayed there, each one healing and finding the strength to build a new life. Some stayed a few weeks, others stayed months. Fiona never turned anyone away, and Prescott never complained about the extra mouths to feed or the complications that sometimes arose. "This is important work," he said whenever anyone asked why they did it. "Every woman deserves to be safe. If we can help with that, we will." In 1898, when Fiona was 39 and Prescott was 44, they added another building to the ranch property. It was larger than the guest cabin, with multiple rooms, designed specifically to house women who needed refuge. They hired a woman named Sarah, one of the first women Fiona had helped years ago, to manage the house and help the residents. The Lawrence Sanctuary, as it became known, was the first of its kind in the region. Women came from all over California, fleeing abusive husbands or dangerous situations. They found safety, support, and help planning their next steps. Some eventually moved on. Others stayed and built lives in San Diego, forming a tight-knit community of survivors. The work was hard and sometimes heartbreaking, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Fiona felt like she had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transformed it into something good. Marcus Thornton's violence had not defeated her. Instead, she had used it as fuel to help ensure other women did not suffer as she had. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, Prescott took Fiona back to the spot where he had proposed. They rode up into the hills on a spring morning, leaving the children in charge of the ranch. At the same flat area with the view of the valley, they spread out a blanket and sat together. 20 years, Prescott said, shaking his head in wonder. "It feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." "I know what you mean," Fiona said. "I cannot imagine my life without you, but I also cannot quite remember what it was like before." "Before was lonely," Prescott said simply. "Before was going through the motions." "You made everything come alive, Fiona. You and our children and the life we built. You are my greatest blessing." "You saved me," Fiona said softly. "That day in town when you stood up for me, you changed everything." "No," Prescott said firmly. "You saved yourself. I just recognized your courage and offered you a safe place to land. But everything else, everything we have built, that was you. Your strength, your compassion, your refusal to let trauma define you. I am in awe of you, Fiona Lawrence." She kissed him, deep and sweet, 20 years of love and partnership in that kiss. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Here is to 20 more," Fiona said. "At least," Prescott agreed. They did not know then that they would have 35 more years together, that they would see their children grow and marry and have children of their own. that the Lawrence Ranch would become a legacy passed down through generations, or that the Lawrence Sanctuary would expand and inspire similar programs throughout California. They did not know that Thomas would become a respected horse breeder whose animals would be sought after across the country, that Margaret would marry a kind ranch hand and raise 4 strong daughters, or that Henry would become a veterinarian who traveled throughout the West caring for animals and teaching others. All they knew in that moment was that they loved each other, that they had built something good together, and that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they packed up their picnic and rode back down to the ranch. The children were waiting for them, gathered on the porch with a cake that Margaret had baked in secret. The cake was lopsided and the frosting was messy, but it was made with love. "Happy anniversary!" the children shouted as Fiona and Prescott approached. Thomas had hung a banner that read, "20 years," across the porch. Henry presented them with wildflowers he had picked. Margaret served the cake with pride, not mentioning that she had dropped it once and had to piece it back together. They ate cake and celebrated as a family, surrounded by love and laughter. Later, when the children had gone to bed, Fiona and Prescott sat on the porch together, watching the stars come out. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Fiona said quietly. "A family, a home, a purpose. Thank you for seeing me when I was at my lowest and believing I could be more." "You were always more," Prescott said. "I just gave you space to become it. But Fiona, you need to understand something. What you did that day in San Diego, standing up to your abuser when the law would not help you, that took incredible courage. You are the bravest person I know." "I was just surviving," Fiona said. "Surviving takes courage, especially when the world is stacked against you. You not only survived, you thrived. You built a life and a family and a sanctuary for others. That is not just survival, that is triumph." Fiona felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, Prescott could still move her with his words, still make her feel seen and valued in ways no one else ever had. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too, always." The years rolled on, bringing changes and growth. The turn of the century came and went. Technology advanced. The world shifted and modernized, but the Lawrence Ranch remained a constant, a place of tradition and values and hard work. In 1910, Thomas married a woman named Elizabeth who shared his love of horses. They built a house on the far end of the ranch property and started their own family. Prescott and Fiona became grandparents to Thomas's children, delighting in spoiling them and teaching them everything they knew. Margaret married in 1912, choosing a gentle ranch hand named William who worked on a neighboring property. They moved to his family's ranch but visited often, and their 4 daughters became regular fixtures at the Lawrence Ranch, learning to ride from their grandmother Fiona. Henry, true to his nature, took his time deciding on his path. He studied veterinary medicine and spent years traveling, but he always came home to the ranch eventually. In 1918, he married a quiet woman named Clara who worked as a teacher, and they settled permanently on the ranch property, building their own small house near the main one. Fiona and Prescott, now in their 50s and 60s respectively, slowly stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch. Thomas took over most of the horse breeding, while Henry managed the cattle. But Fiona remained deeply involved in the sanctuary, which had grown to help dozens of women each year. The work remained close to her heart. Every woman who came through the sanctuary doors reminded Fiona of who she had been, frightened and hurting and desperate for safety. She made sure each one received not just shelter but genuine care, support, and resources to build a new life. In 1920, on a warm summer evening, Fiona and Prescott sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. They were older now, gray-haired and weathered, but their love had only deepened with time. "You remember when we first met?" Fiona asked, though they both knew the answer. "Every detail," Prescott said. "You were the most fearless person I had ever seen. You still are." "I was terrified," Fiona admitted, "but I was also done being a victim. I decided that if I was going to die, it would be on my own terms." "You chose life instead," Prescott said. "Not just for yourself, but for all the women you have helped over the years. You chose to turn your pain into purpose. That is the most remarkable thing I have ever witnessed." Fiona reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining automatically after decades of practice. "I could not have done any of it without you. You gave me a foundation to build on. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done," Prescott said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. 3 of Thomas's children and 2 of Margaret's daughters were visiting, their laughter filling the air. Henry's wife Clara was teaching the youngest ones a game, her patient voice carrying across the distance. This was legacy, Fiona thought. Not just the ranch or the sanctuary, but the family they had built, the values they had instilled, the love they had created and shared. Marcus Thornton had tried to destroy her, but instead she had built something beautiful from the ashes of that trauma. "No regrets?" Prescott asked softly. Fiona thought about the question seriously. Did she regret killing Marcus Thornton? No. He had been a predator who hurt multiple women and would have continued hurting them if she had not stopped him. Did she regret the fear and pain that had led to that moment? Of course, but she could not regret the life that had come after. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Everything I went through led me here, to you, to our family, to this life. I would not change any of it." "Neither would I," Prescott said, echoing the words he had spoken 42 years ago in a dusty San Diego street. As the sun set, and the children were called inside for dinner, Fiona and Prescott remained on the porch, holding hands and watching the stars emerge. They had built a good life together, one founded on justice and compassion and unwavering love. Whatever time they had left, they would spend it the same way they had spent the decades before, side by side, facing the world as partners. The sanctuary continued to thrive under Fiona's guidance well into her 70s. She trained younger women to take over the work, ensuring that it would continue after she was gone. Sarah, who had been managing the house for years, took on more responsibility, and Fiona's granddaughters also became involved, learning the importance of helping women in need. In 1925, the state of California officially recognized the Lawrence Sanctuary for its work, providing some funding and support. At the ceremony, Fiona was asked to speak about why she had started the sanctuary. She stood at the podium, 76 years old and still fierce, and told her story. She told about Marcus Thornton and what he had done. She told about the previous marshal who had refused to help her. She told about taking justice into her own hands and feeling no shame. And she told about Prescott Lawrence, the cowboy who had stood up for her and said he would feel no shame either. "That moment changed my life," she said to the gathered crowd. "Not just because it kept me from hanging, though that certainly helped, but because it showed me that there were good people in the world who would stand up for what was right. Prescott gave me a chance to rebuild my life, and together we created a place where other women could rebuild theirs. This sanctuary is a testament to the power of compassion, justice, and second chances. I hope it continues to serve women for generations to come." The audience gave her a standing ovation. Prescott, sitting in the front row at 71, had tears streaming down his face. He was so proud of her, of everything she had accomplished, of the woman she had become. That night, back at the ranch, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, they celebrated. It was a joyful gathering, full of love and laughter. Fiona looked around at all the faces, at the family they had created, and felt completely content. "Thank you," she whispered to Prescott later when they were alone. "For what? For everything. For seeing me, for loving me, for building this life with me. For being the best partner I could have ever hoped for." Prescott kissed her gently. "The privilege has been all mine, my love." They had several more good years together. Prescott's health began to fail in 1928, his heart growing weak. He faced it with the same steady courage he had faced everything else, determined to make the most of whatever time he had left. On a quiet morning in May of 1929, Prescott Lawrence passed away peacefully in his sleep, Fiona beside him. He was 75 years old and had lived a full, meaningful life. His last words to Fiona had been, "I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next." Fiona grieved deeply, but also felt grateful. 50 years of marriage, 3 children, countless grandchildren, a thriving ranch, and a sanctuary that had helped hundreds of women. They had built something remarkable together. She continued to run the sanctuary after Prescott's death, finding purpose in the work. Her children worried about her, but she insisted she was fine. And she was. She missed Prescott terribly, but she also carried him with her in every decision she made, every woman she helped, every moment of her life. Fiona Grace Lawrence lived to be 85 years old, passing away peacefully in 1934, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Her last thoughts were of Prescott and the life they had shared. She died without fear, knowing she had lived well and loved deeply. The Lawrence Ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family. The sanctuary also continued, eventually expanding to multiple locations throughout California. It became a model for other programs across the country, helping thousands of women over the decades. In San Diego, a historical marker was eventually placed at the spot where Fiona had shot Marcus Thornton. It did not glorify violence, but it acknowledged the reality of her situation and the courage it took to seek justice when the law failed her. It also noted the sanctuary she founded and the countless lives she saved through that work. Her story became part of local legend, a reminder that justice sometimes comes from unexpected places, and that trauma can be transformed into purpose. The woman who killed her abuser and felt no shame became the woman who helped hundreds of other women find safety and healing. And the cowboy who said he would feel no shame either became her partner in building something beautiful from the ashes of violence. Their great-great-grandchildren still run the Lawrence Ranch, maintaining the traditions of excellence in horse breeding and cattle ranching. The sanctuary, now called the Lawrence Foundation, operates multiple facilities throughout California and provides comprehensive services to women fleeing domestic violence. Every year on the anniversary of Fiona and Prescott's wedding, the family gathers at the ranch. They tell the story of how Fiona and Prescott met, about the courage it took for her to seek justice, and the courage it took for him to stand up for her. They talk about the life they built together and the legacy they left behind. The story always ends the same way, with Fiona standing in that dusty street with a smoking gun, feeling no shame, with Prescott stepping forward and saying those 3 words that changed everything, "Neither would I." And with the 2 of them building a life together founded on justice, compassion, and enduring love. It was a love story born from violence but transformed by healing. It was a story of second chances and the courage to keep going when everything seemed lost. It was a story of partnership and purpose, and the power of standing up for what was right. Most importantly, it was a story that proved that even the darkest moments could lead to light, that trauma did not have to define you, and that love could bloom in the most unexpected places. Fiona Grace and Prescott Lawrence had taken their pain and turned it into something beautiful, leaving behind a legacy that continued to touch lives long after they were gone. Their story became a testament to the truth that justice matters, that every woman deserves to be safe, and that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones born from the courage to stand up and say, "This ends now. I will not be a victim anymore. I will survive, and I will thrive, and I will help others do the same." And they did. Together, they created a life of meaning and purpose, raising a family who carried their values forward and building institutions that continued to help people long after they were gone. Fiona never regretted pulling that trigger. Prescott never regretted standing up for her. And together, they never regretted a single moment of the 50 years they spent building a life founded on love, justice, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves a second chance. The Lawrence Ranch still stands today, a working ranch that honors its history while looking toward the future. The Lawrence Foundation continues to grow, expanding its services and helping more women every year. And the story of Fiona and Prescott is still told, a reminder that courage comes in many forms and that love can heal even the deepest wounds. In the end, what started with a gunshot in a San Diego street became a love story for the ages, a tale of two people who found each other in the darkest of circumstances and built something luminous together. They proved that justice and mercy could coexist, that strength and gentleness were not opposites, and that the truest form of love was partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering support. Fiona killed the man who hurt her and felt no shame. Prescott stood beside her and said he would feel no shame either. And from that moment of solidarity and understanding, they built a life that touched thousands of lives, healed countless wounds, and left a legacy that would endure for generations. It was exactly the kind of ending their story deserved, one of hope, healing, and happily ever after.